Hello, everyone, and welcome to Inside Leather History, a Fireside Chat. I'm Doug OKeeffe. I am the producer and the host of these chats, which are a program of the Leather Archives and Museum. Today is Friday. It's December 27th, the very last couple of days of the year. And I am sitting down with Black, aka Ian Turner, who is in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Now, Black is Boot Black Toronto 2002. He's Trouper's boy, Trouper from Detroit, Michigan. Black has been in the scene, in the scene from about, I guess, in the 1970s, and officially and very actively in the scene since about 1992. How are you, Black?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Okay. So how's Toronto treating you right now?
Toronto is treating me well. I celebrated Christmas on Christmas Eve with Alex Dunlop, who you interviewed a
Oh,
number of years ago.
yes.
We had a delightful Christmas Eve dinner, and then Alex worked all day on Christmas Day. I'm doing well, thank you.
Now, you were literally at the very, very finish line of 2024. What's your New Year's resolution?
I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. I've seen so many people make them and uh, not keep them that I think that they're pointless. It's interesting. When I used to work out at a gym, there was always this huge crowd of people at the beginning of January who had made New Year's resolutions. By the end of January, they were all gone. So I don't make them.
That's fair. Now, when we were preparing for this interview, you told me that you identify in the community as a boot black, a boy, and a leather man. That's an interesting grouping. Tell us a little bit about that. How do you fit each of those?
Well, uh, I guess I was into leather for you know quite a long time. Uh, I got my first leather jacket when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
It was a hand me down from a wealthy family who we knew, and their son had grown out of it, and I got this magnificent motorcycle style leather jacket. And but I always liked leather. Um, I got into bootblacking as an actual public pastime in 1999. No, a little earlier than that. A little
Okay.
earlier than that. I think it's more like 96. Yeah, it was
Okay.
more like 96. Um, by that time, I was already active in the National Leather Association and was the male co-chair of the Toronto chapter of the
Okay.
National Leather Association. And so my that was when I got into bootblacking. Uh, Being a boy uh, is much more recent. For much of my leather career, as it were, I was primarily a top. I would
Oh, okay.
occasionally bottom, but I was primarily a top. I was well known uh, as a single tail whipping top. Uh, I was regarded as the gentle roller coaster. People who wanted a gentle single tail whipping would come to me, and
Okay.
people who wanted to have their backs bloodied would go to various other people who I'm sure you know. You may well have interviewed some of them. Uh,
Could be.
um, I also was noted for uh, abrasion scenes using the contents of a dollar store and uh, Have you ever gone with a bunch of kinky people into a dollar store uh,
I
and
have not.
watched how people use their imagination as to what they could do with the various items that they found?
What were
And
some of the items you found?
things like egg toppers and uh, little brushes and uh, uh, feather dusters, all sorts of interesting things that could be used. Chopsticks. You could do amazing CBT scenes with chopsticks. And
Fascinating.
not inserting them, but just using them as a thing for striking. Uh, uh, anyway, uh, people enjoyed having this things done to them, and they would see me at events like Inferno, and they'd see me do it, and then say, "Could you do that to me?" But anyway, I was primarily known as a top,
Okay.
uh, and then uh, Trouper. Then I met Trouper, and it gradually became very clear, without getting into a very long story that spanned some years. I met him in 2007, and by 2010, it was uh, it was very clear to me that he, if he didn't already own me, he certainly could own me at any moment. And I basically offered myself to him, and he uh, uh, he gave me. We had a trial period in the autumn of 2010, and then he officially collared me in a ceremony at the Detroit Bondage Club in December of 2010. So I've now been his boy for 14 years. And
What about Trooper made you want to be his boy?
I recognized that he was superior to me. He had certain superpowers that I still can't explain. The first time we ever had a sexual encounter, he began speaking to me, and he was saying word for word what I was thinking.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my God, he can read my mind. And it was one of the most erotic experiences I'd ever had in my life, was
Wow.
somebody reading my mind during a sex scene. And uh, I will not go into the details as to the various things that uh, that he read, but it was absolutely astonishing. And he has various other superpowers that I've learned since then. He doesn't know necessarily where I am, but he knows when I've stopped. So
Hmm.
if I'm on a long drive, I can drive for an hour or two, and I'll stop in a rest area, and my phone will ring. And he said, "I noticed you stopped, so I thought I'd give you a call."
Wow.
How he does
That's
it, I don't
amazing.
know. But anyway, he's got superpowers, and
Hmm.
I consider him to be superior to me, and uh, so does he. So uh, it's wonderful.
So are you looking at wedding bells at some point or
No, uh,
okay.
no. Trooper has a partner, Andrew, and they they're very much together. Uh, they've been together for some years longer than a year or two longer than I knew Trooper. Uh,
Okay.
I uh, I had already met Andrew. In fact, he introduced us to each other, uh,
Oh,
and
beautiful.
is well aware of what's going on between Trooper and me. And he is I have made it very clear that I would not do anything that would interfere with their relationship. Uh,
Beautiful.
Relationship that I value as well as they value it. And um, Andrew put it nicely once that he said, I fill needs for Trouper that Trouper has, or requirements that Trouper has, that Andrew uh, doesn't fill, and so
Okay.
it sort of complements, as it were, in the sense of completes, uh, and it works fine.
Beautiful statement, beautiful thing, beautiful feelings to share. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
I hope I'm not
Well,
saying too much.
no, that's between you and Trooper.
Yeah.
I'll ask the questions and you decide what you want to do. But coming over, please tell us a little bit about your growing up, a bit about your family situation.
Okay, I'm an only child. My my mother was born in the UK. My father was born in India of British parents, and
Okay.
so basically, my mother was a Scot. My father was a Sassenach, which, for those that don't speak Scottish, that's a Saxon. He's an Englishman.
Oh, I
Uh,
see.
uh, so uh, I'm a mongrel, uh, and we uh,
Excuse me.
uh, I was an only child, born quite late in their lives,
Okay.
and so my parents are older. My grandparents are astonishingly, or were astonishingly old. They all died when I was still a child. Uh,
Uh,
my 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 paternal grandfather was born in 1868, just to give you an idea.
wow. Wow.
But in any case, I had what seems to be a fairly normal upbringing. I did have some strange quirks. I used to, when I can, one of the few things I can remember about sleeping in a crib was I used to get up on my hands and knees and bang my head against the end of the crib.
Why?
And in those days, autism hadn't really been invented.
Uh,
But I've since discovered that that's a symptom of autism. And everybody thought that I just happened to be a bit weird, you know. They couldn't quite put their finger on it. But I was at the on the highly functioning end of the autism spectrum, and remain that way. And it shows up from time to time. Uh, but
excuse me.
that uh, that's something like some people talk about autism spectrum disorder, and I don't use that because I don't experience it as a disorder.
Okay.
My autism got me 2 university degrees and a successful career, uh, and so I'm not about to change it.
Where is your family from, though?
Well, my mother grew up in Scotland and spent part of her time in England. They moved around a lot. My grandfather was a Church of Scotland minister, and he went for there was a parish needing a minister. So, and my father uh, grew up in India.
Hmm.
His first language was Hindi.
Oh,
Uh,
fascinating.
he couldn't speak it, by the time I knew it was around, but it was his first language. But then when in 1914, in the fall, they moved to move back to England, I suspect because of the First World War.
Hmm. Hmm.
And they so he really grew up in England.
What took the family to Canada?
My father could speak French, and I gather, moved to Montreal, and where he could, use his French,
Hmm.
and worked in, I think, originally for a bank, and later on in the insurance business, became his career. Uh, my mother her brother had moved to Montreal many years earlier, and my mother was coming over to as part of a group tour of an organization she was a member of. She was coming over to and was going to visit her brother in Montreal, and discovered this man on the ship
Uh,
who uh, turned out knew her brother. And by the time they got off the ship, they'd realized that they were the ones. The brother persuaded my mother to wait a year and think it over, uh,
okay.
and she did. She was good advice, and anyway, that's how I came to be born in Canada. 8 years later, they were married in 1938, and I didn't come along until 1946.
Okay.
And, so,
Well, I'm sure Toronto's dramatically different now than it was at the world around the World War II time.
oh yeah, the family never lived in Toronto. I
Oh,
moved to Toronto to go to graduate school.
oh, okay.
We grew up in I was born in Montreal, but then when I was a year old, we moved out to British Columbia, and
Oh, sorry, I got that wrong, didn't
British
I? Yeah.
Columbia, and then we moved to North Vancouver, which is where I really grew up.
Got it.
And I graduated from University of British Columbia, and then uh, went to graduate school at University of Toronto, and I fell in love with Toronto the moment I got here. I just loved it, and also found that Toronto was politically a much more comfortable place for me to live. British Columbia, even now, is politically divided. You're either extreme right wing or you're militant left wing. And
Oh,
uh, I found that I was going back for visits to my parents, and half the people I was talking to called me a fascist, and the other half were calling me a communist. And I couldn't deal with that. I was much happier to be somewhere in the middle politically.
wow. Wow. Um, Tell me, what other than the political element was so fascinating in Toronto for you?
The culture. I've heard it said, I don't know what the evidence is, but I've heard it said that it is the third largest theater center in the English speaking world after New York and London.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know
And,
that.
Toronto has a wonderful opera company that I've supported and attended as a subscriber since 1975. Uh,
Wow.
and it's got, ballet company. It's got numerous theaters, often of the smaller fringe variety, uh, uh, and of course, lots of movie houses and that sort of thing. And so it was a wonderful place in that regard. And it has a real winter and a real summer. Uh, it, it gets uncomfortably cold in winter and uncomfortably hot in summer, but I like the heat.
Me too, with you on that one.
Uh,
Um, when we were preparing for this chat and we were talking about some of the things we wanted to cover, um, I got quite found quite entertaining. You wrote me a rant alert, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing now, but it caused we went ahead and redid this. So I'd like to phrase the question by asking you, tell us about when you first became aware that you were kinky?
Right. Well, like I think just about every little boy growing up in my generation, and I don't think much has changed. Uh, we loved stories of adventure and things that were gross and people being, you know, people being tortured and taken prisoner and so on. And, we read things like The Count of Monte Cristo, where somebody was, imprisoned for years and years and had to escape, and all these adventure stories and stuff. And goodness knows we're with it even today.
Yeah.
Look at the number of detective shows, and they all involve murders uh, uh, and other horrible crimes, and we get off on seeing it. Well, I began to notice that I was getting off in ways that not all my friends were. I would occasionally get a hard on, and I didn't understand what a hard on meant, but I knew that
Mhm.
something was happening that that wasn't affecting them,
Hmm.
and I I pretty much kept it to myself, but that was probably the first I realized that I was different. That was before I realized I was gay,
Oh, okay.
because at that age, uh, you know, uh, kids were just sexual. They weren't they didn't it didn't get into, well, actually, girls, you talk to a prepubescent boy and he'll say girls, ooh,
Yes.
you know and so really, uh, I didn't think much about it. And then I noticed that my friends were gradually getting interested in girls. And I figured that the same way that one morning in my teens, I got up one morning and discovered that my voice had dropped an octave.
Okay.
I figured that there would be one morning when I would get up and suddenly I would be interested in girls. And it never happened. And by that time, I realized that being gay was not socially approved. And I remained in the closet, knowing what I was, but not doing anything about it until I was 26, I guess. It
Okay.
was the spring of 1973. By that time, I was living in England. I spent 3 years living in England, and I was living in England, and eventually, very cautiously, came out, and immediately realized that my fears were completely unfounded. I thought it was going to be like the Lady of Shalott, that the moment I looked the world in the straight on, my entire past life would collapse behind me, and I would be, totally rejected and out of the picture. In fact, I discovered one of the first people I told was gay. He said, "We thought so." And I said, "Who's we?" And he said, "Well, the rest of us." And it turned out that I already knew quite a few gay people. And so I eventually became very open and very active in the gay community.
Tell us a little bit about the gay community at that time. You mentioned, was it 1973? Is that correct?
Yes, and I returned to Canada the following year in 74, and
Okay.
I got involved with a group called Gay Alliance Toward Equality. And in those days, uh, the community was very much divided between men and women. Uh, the gay men did our thing, and the lesbians did their thing. There was a small overlap. There were one or two lesbians that were involved in a gay alliance toward equality, but the vast, uh, for the most part, while we cooperated with each other and we strongly supported the rights of women and so on, the two groups sort of met separately. And if you look at uh, pictures of gay rights demonstrations and so on, you'll see that most of the people in the ones organized by the men's groups are mostly men, and the ones organized by the women's group are mostly women. Uh, but I was active in the Gay Alliance Toward Equality. I was their treasurer for a year or so. I coordinated the Coalition for Gay Rights in Ontario for 1 year, just 1 year. Uh, uh, I I discovered I could rouse rabble. I could make speeches and get a crowd going, which scared the bejesus out of me, and I backed away from it because
Wow.
uh, uh, I didn't want to be a demagogue. I wanted just to be a more regular sort of guy. But if you look up in, especially the what's called the archives, the Canadian Lesbian and Gay Archives, you can find pictures of me leading demonstrations in bell-bottom trousers.
Hmm.
There were
Why do you think you were particularly good at this?
you mean of rousing the rabble?
Yes.
I have no idea.
Hmm.
It, I just, there I was making a speech, and I suddenly discovered that that my timing was right, and everybody would cheer. And I don't know if you ever remember seeing Charlie Chaplin in The Great Dictator, and he would come to a point and he would wave his hand, and the crowd would start, and then he'd suddenly do wave his hand again, and they'd stopped. And I discovered I could do that. And
Wow.
that's, I thought, holy shit, uh, this
Hmm.
is not, you know, this is an area I don't want to pursue.
Why not?
uh, I I realized what some politicians unfortunately haven't realized, that being able to rouse the rabble does not necessarily mean that you're going to do a good job of governing.
True. Yes.
And uh, I I wasn't sure that I was capable of doing some of the things that I could easily reel off. Uh, and there were other people who were much better at it, who were
Hmm.
able to get a lot of those things done.
Interesting. Now, what would you rather have done and perhaps stayed and done more work there?
Oh, well, one of the things that happened was that uh, I had been at a gay rights demonstration in Ottawa in front of the Parliament buildings, and there were a bunch of us going home to Toronto on the train together,
Hmm.
and we had two sets of facing seats, and we began talking about needs in the community, and we realized that the only peer counseling available in the gay community in Toronto at that time was run by a church.
Hmm.
And while there's nothing inherently wrong with that, it does mean that people who are not particularly religious didn't really have a secular place
Yes.
to go. And that set a that set of wheels in motion, as it were. And I called together a meeting that took place in my living room, and an organization called Toronto Area Gays. It later became Toronto Area Gays and Lesbians
Good.
was formed, and we ran a telephone line, a counseling telephone line.
Hmm.
And I uh, I did not continue with the phone counseling to any great extent. I did a little bit of it. However, uh, I can't really talk about my life as a Leatherman without mentioning John McConnell.
John McConnell. Okay.
Some of you people from San Diego would know him as Roadkill. And John McConnell and I met at a Gay Alliance Toward Equality meeting in 1975. And it turned out he lived in the apartment building next door to the apartment building I lived in. So we walked home together. By the time we had got back there, we discovered that we both used to go jogging and we became jogging partners. And I also discovered that he was kinky and I was kinky. And he was one of the first people I ever played with. And I was one of the first people he ever played with. So
Uh,
he was more adventurous than I was by a long shot.
hmm.
I'm not going to go into his story because literally there have been books, people have written books. But in any case, uh, he became a sort of instigator in my life, and he would encourage me to try things that I hadn't tried before. And
Good.
one
Okay.
of the things that he did, he was at that point a psychology student at the University of Toronto, and uh, uh, he approached Tag, and as it was then known, and offered to start a coming out support group for gay men who were coming out.
Okay.
And Tag said yes, and this group began. Well, by 1976, I guess it would have been, he was getting ready to graduate. And he realized that he was going to be going off to graduate school in another part of the country. It turned out to be San Diego in the end.
Uh,
Uh, but he needed somebody to take the group over and suggested to me that I take it over. And so for the fall of 1977, I guess it was, we ran the group jointly in his apartment, and then we moved to the building next door. And for the spring of, for the winter and spring of 1978, it happened in my apartment,
oh,
and I
okay.
continued to run that group for 22 years
My gosh.
with considerable help from other people. We eventually set ourselves up as a separate organization, and our board, as it were, consisted of the people who facilitated it, and we would have two facilitators on each night, uh, uh, where we realized there were some potentially legal issues for a
Okay.
single facilitator that it's useful to have a second person who can say no, he didn't tell somebody who was underage to go to a bar or
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, so there were always two of us, and we ran this for it finally. I guess it was about year 2000 that we finally closed it.
Wow. What are the chances of an organization in the LGBTQ plus community lasting that long? That's amazing.
Are you aware that the longest running gay organization in Canada is Spearhead, which is a leather club?
No, I did not know that.
Yep.
Fascinating.
I'm not a member of Spearhead, but I have a great respect for them, and they're a Toronto group.
Wow. I'd like to see if we can find anybody there. I would enjoy an interview with them, I think.
Oh, I can put you in touch, but we'll do that offline.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Yep.
No, I didn't know this. I appreciate you bringing it up. But you're a Quaker, and for the benefit of the audience, would you please explain a little bit about your faith?
Uh, when I was in the UK, I guess last month, a little over a month ago, and I happened to drop by friend's house, which is the sort of uh, British headquarters for the British Quakers.
Okay,
And they
yeah.
had a sign outside that summed it up very nicely from my point of view, which was it said, uh, "We what we have in common is a way of life, not a set of beliefs." And
Beautiful.
we believe that by sitting together in silence, we can reach a sort of common spiritual level between us that surpasses all of us. That there is something of this spirit, which some people refer to as God. There is something of this spirit in all of us,
Okay.
and that everybody has the ability to develop their own relationship with God or the Spirit or whatever it is you choose to call it.
Okay. Interesting.
Um, Historically, we were a Christian group because the early founders, notably George Fox, back in the 17th century, that was pretty much the only religion on offer in those days. So it was the only religious vocabulary they had.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
now, where we're more cognizant of other religions, yes, we have groups of Quakers that are very, very gung-ho Christians, but they're the likes of me who, uh, yeah, I learn a lot from the Christian faith, and I think it's got a lot to teach and a lot to offer. But I don't believe in the circular logic thing about God somehow sending his son to be sacrificed as an offering to him to appease him for committing sins that he invented. And there's too much circular logic in that. And I was intrigued to read some of the writings of Elias Hicks, who is saying a Quaker who is saying exactly the same thing 200 years ago. Uh,
Mhm.
so, you know, it's not a new concept. Anyway, uh, we emphasize, we don't tell people what they're supposed to believe. We tell people, find this in your own experience and we'll help you find it. But we're not going to tell you what you're expected to believe. Um, that's uh, we're officially called the Religious Society of Friends. Uh,
Yes.
the Quaker term was originally an insulting word, sort of like holy roller or whatever, and it was, and we just adopted it as our own. Uh, I suspect that the word Christian was probably an insulting word uh, to originally too, but the Christians just adopted it, you know.
I
Uh,
see. Yeah. You
anyway,
told
that's
me
where I'm at religiously.
you told me that you've been able, or maybe other people too, to incorporate your faith into your sexuality. How do you do that?
Well, God visits, God's all over the place. You know, attends all the meetings we go to. God's with us right now, uh, and doesn't always manifest. But every so often, I will have a scene that is truly spiritual, and I can't make it happen.
And you're referring to a sexual scene.
A sexual or SM scene,
Yeah. Okay.
and uh, I can remember playing with a friend of mine, and he said, "I'm reaching into the depths of your soul," and I realized he really was,
Hmm.
and it was an astonishing scene. And he tried to reproduce it with a sort of a month or two later with a ritual with candles and heaven knows what all. And I believe that God has a sense of humor. And this guy had wanted, he was going to bring out the spirit animal in me. And I came out as a domestic house cat. He thought I was going to be a tiger or or a wild bull or something. And I came out as a house cat and was purring and stroking myself against his legs. And the whole scene fell completely flat with us both hooting with laughter. And I thought, don't try and don't try and conjure up God. You'll get unpredictable results.
So you had taken on the essence of an animal, or am I misunderstanding you?
Oh, there are you've probably seen movies and read stories about people who having a spirit animal. Well, he was trying to find my spirit animal, and
Oh, okay. Okay.
I think I am more of a cat. There's this wonderful puppy movement going on. Well,
Yeah.
I'm definitely not a puppy, but I am a cat. Uh, I once horrified Trouper by curling up and going to sleep in his lap and in the middle of a party, and he was scandalized.
May not have been the most convenient situation, but
There's even a picture of me.
my goodness. Okay. Hmm. Where do I go from that? Uh, um, and you did mention there is an organization called the Kinky Quakers.
No,
No? Okay.
no.
Maybe I got that wrong. But
There are, there's on FetLife.
uh,
On FetLife, there is a group called Kinky Quakers,
okay, I'm not totally crazy. Okay.
and but it's not an organization. And I'd say if it got a posting once a year, that would be a lot.
Okay.
It's very rarely uh, on it, but let's say there are a lot more Kinky Quakers than I initially expected to see.
Goodness gracious. And
You
that
know,
surprises you?
like well, remember there's less than 200,000 Quakers in the world.
No, I did not know that either.
There are less than 1,000 in Canada.
My
There's
God.
probably a bit over 100,000 in the United States. So we represent a tiny group of people.
Got it.
And so uh, just one of us in one of these SM organizations is a disproportionately large number.
My
And
gosh.
there are two of us in the Chicago Hellfire Club. There are three of us in the 15 Association, and there are four of us in Delta.
Wow. Fascinating.
And
Fascinating.
uh, you know, there's other uh, other groups. I'm certainly not the only kinky Quaker in Canada, and I'm not going to mention names because out of respect for their privacy. But
That's good. Now, if you would, please tell us about your boot blacking and the community you originally experienced.
right, well, I first learned about bootblacking as a sort of public thing that one actually did and could do as an erotic thing. Uh,
Yes.
I guess I first became aware of it one Pride day where there was I think it was a barber shop that had a bootblack, and they had a haircutting booth and this bootblack. And this bootblack was absolutely astonishing. He was wearing nothing but a jock strap and was uh, uh, just got polish pretty much here, there, and everywhere.
Yes.
And by the end of the day, he was just dripping with sweat and just totally immersed in this world. As a bootblack friend of mine said to me, who'd seen the same thing, he said, by the end of it, he was no longer relating to the people; he was just relating to boots.
Yes. Yes, I
And
can see that.
it was an incredibly erotic sight. Well, um, I went to a workshop that somebody gave, and about bootblacking, and discussed and demonstrated a whole bunch of stuff. And I learned things, that really work well to do. And I also learned one or two things that are not a good idea to do. Do not set your polish on fire. Um,
Yeah, okay. My
there,
gosh.
apart from anything else, the shoe polish company went to considerable effort to create a formula that works best on your boots. And now you're going to remove some of the ingredients by burning them. Uh,
Uh,
but
uh,
more important, he had this uh, brimful, brand new thing of polish that he'd set alight. And he accidentally bumped himself, and the burning polish, hit his hand, and he did this. And the next thing you know, there were little spot fires all over the stage,
oh
and we
no.
got them all stamped out. But they never managed to get the polish out of the stage. It had melted right into the wood on the stage.
Wow.
Uh, and I learned from that an important lesson. Uh, but I also I began doing bootblacking. Uh, we we were doing a leather weekend of some sort that National Leather Association Toronto was
Hmm.
doing, and we uh, uh, the female co-chair and I, as the male co-chair, volunteered to bootblack, and also the then reigning Miss Leather Toronto was also bootblacking with us,
Okay.
and uh, uh, Viola Johnson, who you may very well know,
Yes, I
uh,
do.
uh, she had uh, she had somehow she's announced in the Leather Journal that she collected underwear, and she wanted the underwear of the female co-chair of NLA Toronto, and so we both agreed, because we had to have gender equality, that
Yes.
our underwear would be auctioned afterwards. And uh, it's the only time that my jock strap sold for $50,
Hey, that's pretty good.
which, I took as a personal compliment. Uh,
Yes.
but anyway, we bootblacked, and I continued bootblacking. I began bootblacking at the Toolbox, which was uh, one of the two leather bars in Toronto at the time.
I remember
And
that. Yeah.
I was looking for a poster to do a workshop. on bootblacking. And a guy named Scotty, who used to run the Men in Boots Club International out of Vancouver, BC, I contacted him and he said, I can't, I don't think this would work as a poster, but he sent me a picture of a boot that you can see just to the left of my ear in the picture, or in and here it's hard to point there. Uh, he sent me just a photocopy of that picture, and I realized I couldn't use that as a graphic; it was too complex.
I
But he
see.
said you ought to talk to the guy that did that because he knows more about bootblacking than anyone I knew. And Boot Tom, as he was called, or Tom Lindsay, became my mentor
Okay.
in bootblacking. He taught me more than any other single person about how to spit shine. He had never bootblacked publicly. People sent him boots by FedEx,
Oh,
and he would polish them and send them back. And he was a very gifted artist. And that is a full color, that picture is a full color painting in watercolors. And it's his self portrait. If you look in the toe of the boot, you'll see his face
oh, wow. Wow.
reflected in the boot. And so that's Tom was a major influence on my life, and uh, I still go and visit him and his partner or his husband on a regular basis. They live in Fort Lauderdale.
But
Uh,
where did he glean his experience?
I'm not sure where he learned it.
Okay.
I've never asked, and at this point, he wouldn't remember.
Okay.
But uh, I he was my major mentor. Um, Boot blacking, though, when I was doing it, was boot blacking. I was not a boot brown. I was not a boot red. I was
Ah,
certainly not a boot
yeah.
white.
Yeah.
Um, there are expectations of a modern boot black that we never had to worry about. Basically, 99% of the boots that we were presented with were black.
Yes.
And uh, we didn't have, how a boot black in a dimly lit bar can properly match up colors is lost to me. I can see if somebody did a drop off and you could take it to somewhere with decent lighting,
Yeah.
you could do it, but I can't see how you could possibly do that in a bar. But
Agreed. Mhm.
anyway, uh, I did end up with a series of bootmasters. I got one. There was a couple in Indianapolis, and that lasted basically just a few months, but they gave me the name Black,
Oh, okay.
and I have been Black ever since, or known as Black ever since.
Who was the
Uh,
couple
the couple,
in
uh,
Indianapolis?
Blade and Robert,
Oh, okay. Okay.
if you know them. And uh, I think the first time I ever saw you was interviewing Alex Kepler, and I think Blade and Robert were in the audience, if I remember rightly.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
but
Wonderful.
anyway, uh, uh, that didn't work out for various reasons that we don't need to go into, and
Yeah.
we've remained friends ever since. But it just didn't work out as a relationship. Uh, However, I then met Master Barry, who is a member of the Chicago Hellfire Club, and Master Barry had a major boot fetish, And he did have multicolored boots because he had some of these cowboy boots with the intricate multicolored things.
Yeah,
Uh, I would only do those uh, when visiting him, and I would, have all my polishes, and I had decent lighting and so on,
yeah.
and so I was able to do those. He was uh, he was also incidentally a rock star. Barry Stern, the drummer from E Trope and Trouble and uh,
Don't know.
Reincorporated. He was a heavy metal uh, drummer,
Oh,
and,
okay, fascinating.
uh, and already he had a boy number one named Scott, and so that was the first three-way type relationship that I was in, and uh, the funny thing was that Scott and I were both opera fans, and he was into heavy metal,
Uh-huh.
and he thought that this was very amusing. And Scott and I both discovered in his bookshelf, Paul Hindemith's textbooks on harmony, and realized he was classically trained.
Oh, wow.
There's a common thread that runs through all music,
Yeah.
and they all, even these headbanging heavy metal type people are are often very, very well educated in music.
Yes, that's true.
Uh,
Yes.
but anyway, Master Barry died very unexpectedly in 2005.
Oh.
And so, but he was known for his boots even in the heavy metal scene. Uh,
Amazing.
but anyway, he was my boot master.
Tell us about becoming Toronto Boot Black 2002.
Right. Um, the contest sort of suddenly appeared. It was there'd been an annual Mr. Leatherman Toronto contest for a number of years,
Yes.
and they also ran for most of its time. They ran the leather ball. The first two leather balls, I think, were run by a different by a bar.
Oh, okay.
From the Leather Ball 3 onwards, it was run by the Mr. Leatherman Toronto organization.
Oh.
And they, uh, uh, I offered to boot black at the Leather Ball. And they were more than happy to set up an arrangement for me to do it. And it turned out there was another boot black also working at the Leather Ball that I didn't even know about. Uh, and so there were two of us at different areas of this vast event space, both bootblacking very busily. And I always bootblack for charities. Uh,
Oh,
I never kept my I never kept my tips. Uh,
wow. Beautiful.
I'm uh, I wouldn't call myself filthy rich, but I have enough money to live quite nicely for the rest of my life.
Of
My
course. Yeah.
The company I had a career with was bought, and most of us were shareholders, and the share prices went up enormously when we were bought, and I was able to retire, and so uh, I
Wonderful.
I
Love it.
don't I don't need the tips, and so I raised money. And then suddenly, out of the blue, MLT, Mr. Leatherman Toronto
Yes.
organization, decided to have a boot black contest, which they called Boot Black Toronto, because there's Mr. Leatherman Toronto, and so there's Boot Black Toronto, and it would be gender neutral,
Okay,
and
good.
there was the first year there were three contestants. There was me, and there was Boy Joe, who is a woman, although he chooses to use male pronouns now. And then there was Gene, Gene Herrick, a Eugene type Gene, like Gene,
Yes, yes.
who was male. And uh, I won the contest.
What do
And
you think you won?
um, first of all, it was a judged contest, although there was a balloted uh, element of it. Uh, for the most part, it was, most of the score came from judging,
Hmm.
and that gave me a bit of a leg up. That I was pretty good at putting a shine on boots, um, whereas and the others were also good. Uh, and Gene was a much sexier boot black than I
Ah.
was, in my opinion. But in any case, uh, apparently I impressed the judges more, or whatever, but it's hard to say. We weren't told who the judges were
Oh,
until afterward.
interesting.
And I'd figured out who, I think I'd figured out two of them.
Hmm.
Uh, Boy Jode figured out all of them. And Gene, I don't think had figured out any of them. But anyway, uh, when somebody gets on your bootleg stand where carrying a clipboard, that's sort of a giveaway. That
Was there some reason they were keeping this information secret?
I think they thought they wanted they wanted to know how we would treat any customer, not just
Got
somebody
it.
who's the judge.
Yeah.
We didn't. We announced them in future years, uh,
Hmm.
anyway, I won, and as it happened, because I was retired, I was free to travel. Whereas the Mr. Leatherman Toronto that year worked for a living, and while he did some amazing fundraisers in Toronto, I
Excuse
mean,
me.
he he could raise more money in a single evening fundraiser than I raised in a whole year. But
Wow.
but nevertheless, I made it. I just picked out events that didn't have a boot black and said, "Would you like a boot black?" And I ended up going from coast to coast twice.
Wow.
Uh, I was in British Columbia at Western Canada Leather Pride. I boot blacked at Mr. Atlantic Canada Leather. I boot blacked at 15 Associations Boot Camp, and I boot blacked at the Ramrod in Fort Lauderdale, and I was just all over the place.
Yes, I can see.
Uh, uh, so I sort of put that title on the map. Suddenly people had heard of Boot Black Toronto, and I competed at the International Mr. Boot Black, which is a totally balloted contest. And there were problems with the balloting, as I think
Oh
you're
no.
probably well aware that uh, there were people literally going around and collecting ballots for their candidate, and supposedly this wasn't supposed to happen.
Hmm.
But there was a lot of that sort of thing going on, and it gave the contest a bad name.
Where was it held that year?
Chicago. It's
Oh,
always it's always in Chicago. It was run by the International Mr. Leather organization.
okay. Yeah, I know
So,
there's been changes. I wanted to make sure of
oh,
where we
that's
were, and
I don't want to get into the modern politics of that,
yeah, that's a whole nother
but
matter. Right?
in any case, uh, uh, the the balloting, the bootblacks wanted a judged contest, and but it took years before we eventually got one. But in any case, I
Wild.
came fifth, and uh, carried on with my travels and so on. Uh, but I did remain active. I was sort of became the coordinator of the Boot Black Toronto contest, and I volunteered quite frequently at the IML, International Mr. Boot Black contest, uh, but not the years that we ran a contestant.
Oh,
Uh,
of course, of course.
because
Yeah.
that would have been a conflict of interest because
Yes.
when we were running a contestant, I was part of the contestant support team,
Yeah. Yeah.
and uh, whereas uh, if there was if we had somebody who was competing at IMSL at the International Miss Boot Black, then I was free to volunteer
Hmm. Yeah.
at the IMBB or at the International Mr. Boot Black. Uh, Eventually, of course, the International Community Boot Black got going as well,
Yes.
and that was a judged contest. And some of our we gave our winners a choice of which of the three contests that they would be sent to.
Okay. Okay.
So some of us uh, uh, continued to be at International Mr. Boot Black. Some went to IMSL, and some went to Community Boot Black, and and one went to both International Mr. and Community Boot Black, and one Community Boot Black.
Great.
And we've had a winner. We've had an IMBB, a Community B, and an IMSL Boot Black. We've had one of each.
Oh, that's great because you don't hear that very often.
Uh, that was over the course of a number of years.
Sure, but yeah. Now, is your contest still operating?
No,
Okay.
no,
When did it stop? Do you remember?
uh, the last one we did was the year that uh, Tarna won uh, the IMSL Boot Black, and that was our last year, and it was about 2012, I think,
Oh, okay. Okay.
something around that, and then there we couldn't get anybody wanting to run again. People began to notice what the expectations now were of a winner.
Uh,
And they were saying, I don't have the time to do this if I win.
yeah.
And we also, there was also a major upheaval in the Mr. Leatherman Toronto organization. Uh,
Oh,
and uh, it eventually it was very nearly folded and then was taken over by a group called Heart of the Flag Federation.
oh, I
And,
know of it. Yeah. Okay.
and Heart of the Flag ran it for a number of years. And then for various uh, reasons that get well beyond the scope of this particular interview, it collapsed. And that was the uh, you're watching an autistic moment here. My telephone is ringing in the other room, and it's now my. I'm conscious that my answering machine is probably worried into action, but
I don't hear anything. At least at this moment, I don't.
good, good. That's the objective. But anyway, the organization folded, and that was the end of that. And frankly, the leather community in Toronto very nearly folded.
I remember that.
Far fewer leather events going on now. Every so often, there'll be something on at the Black Eagle. The toolbox is long since
Yeah,
uh,
that's gone now.
it's
Yeah.
gone. The owners decided to retire and couldn't find anybody to take it over as a business, and so they sold the building, and it's now a condominium.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now, I can't help but notice your collar. uh, your relationship with Trouper.
Yes,
Tell us, what does that mean to you?
it means that he owns me and that I am, I am his property, and uh, I sort of hold myself in trust for him, as it were. And he does a great deal to control my life.
Hmm.
Uh, One of the things that uh, people have noticed is the transformation of my appearance. Now, I
Well,
dress up pretty much fairly conventionally uh, this time because I thought you probably would want somebody who looks vaguely like a Leatherman.
thank you.
But he's got me wearing, I used to wear nothing but black.
Ah,
And
ah.
he has me
Hmm.
wearing different colors now. He, uh, he, I wore wire-rimmed glasses, aviator type wire-rimmed glasses for years. And he picked out uh, these round style glasses. This is the second generation of round glasses that I'm now wearing. Uh, these are
Pretty.
these are made uh, from plastic that's been recovered from the ocean,
Oh, okay.
or eco ocean ones. And the next time you see me, I may not be wearing glasses at all because I'm having cataract surgery next month,
Oh
or
my gosh.
February.
Wow.
Having cataract
Okay.
surgery. Right now, you look like you're in a fog uh, because I've got cataracts.
Oh, I see.
And I had to pull out my trusty magnifying glass to read the uh, code number I had to enter on your Zoom call.
Well, I'm glad we've resolved that piece. So now, how would you like to be remembered by the community?
That was a difficult one. Yeah. Um, I certainly want to be remembered as Trooper's boy. That's, you know, Trouper is, to my mind, the greatest thing that's happened in my life has been being Trooper's boy.
How
Uh,
beautiful to say.
this uh, it's I just I love him with a passion, and uh, it's just it's the longest relationship I've ever been in.
No kidding.
Uh,
Wow.
you know, and so I'm very happy being owned by Trooper. Um, I would like to be remembered for the work I did for gay liberation and so on back in the back in the day.
Yes.
Uh, Partly because I think that there's a new generation that doesn't realize that some of the things that we were doing back then were really controversial.
You
You
said
know,
it. That's
you
the
know,
truth.
uh, Anita Bryant claimed that we were recruiting, and I guess that made me one of the recruiting officers. You know, uh,
She was crazy.
yes, I know, but
Were you
you know,
part of the pie? Did you hit her with the pie?
no,
I
no,
mean,
but
I'm
I was
teasing.
certainly helping people come out, and you know, that's that was considered pretty controversial
Yes. Mhm.
back then, uh, and in certain parts of the world, I could be put to death for doing that,
Yes.
even now.
Yeah.
So, I think that I want to be remembered for that sort of thing. I would like to be remembered for being somebody who uh, did his part in various different endeavors. I was, involved with NLA, Toronto, as I mentioned. I was also on the board of Delta for a couple of years, for 3 years,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
spent 1 year of that as chairman, and uh, eventually ended up resigning from the board. Uh, and uh, I'm not going to go over all the details on that one.
That's fair.
As much of the issues are uh, are long since resolved, and
Good. Okay.
some of the people involved have long since passed on, and so it's water under the bridge. Uh, but uh, like many organized, we know that there's no drama in the leather community.
None.
Uh,
None.
you know, there was a certain amount of drama, and I suppose those who enjoy sausages shouldn't watch them being made. But anyway, I was involved with Delta. Uh, uh, my activities in the other clubs have been largely things like act like bootblacking, especially at Inferno. Trouper and I bootblack at every Inferno.
Oh, okay.
Um, we divide up the schedule, and Trouper he tells me which sessions I'll do, and he picks certain sessions that he does. And Inferno always has a charity that
Yes.
supported, and so we always are raising funds for that charity.
Beautiful.
Do I need to mention what Inferno is? It just occurs to me that there may be some people who don't know that Inferno is the annual SM run for the Chicago Hellfire Club.
Now they know.
And
Yes, it
uh,
probably was a good idea to bring that up. Yes.
so and it's uh, that we won't go into all the details but we have lots of fun. Uh,
We
yeah,
would never bring it up, would we? Now,
yeah.
what's the biggest misconception about you?
That I am not nearly as powerful as some people think I am.
Oh,
Which is one of the reasons that I backed away. You were asking me, why did you back away from your public speaking and so on? That I've I've discovered that I can come across and be accepted as a leader, but when push comes to shove, if somebody uh, wants to be more powerful, I'm not good at playing all the political things, and
I see.
that was part of the problem that ultimately led to my resignation from the Delta board. That
I see. Okay.
uh, I was I was very naive when I look back about what some people would warn me, so and so is doing this, and I'd heard so much drama in the leather community that I'd say, oh, he wouldn't possibly do that, and it turned out he was doing this, and there were things like that was,
In this community, honey.
and so uh, I. Uh, I'm not as powerful as people think I am,
Hmm.
and it's one of the reasons that I've held off some of my leadership
Hmm.
positions. Like when my term came to we at National Leather Association Toronto, we had a 2-term limit rule in our bylaws, and when my second term, which was a 2-year term, came to an end, I was more than happy to step aside. I was not, uneasy lies the head that wears the crown, and I was much happier running one of the education committee.
mm.
That was much more my style.
Well, eventually you do find where you need to be, don't you,
Yep,
in a lot of these things.
yep.
But Black, I've got to thank you for a wonderful interview for Inside Leather History, a fireside chat. This has been an absolute pleasure. And when you speak with Trouper, you must please send him a big hug for me.
Trouper also sends greetings to you. By the way, I was talking to him on Christmas Day, and he made a special point of saying that please give Doug my greetings. And so I'm
Thank
sure
you.
the hug is mutual.
Mm.
And
He's such a wonderful person. Just, I have so much respect for him. I truly do.
oh, yes, yeah, yeah, he is wonderful and the
Okay.
most handsome man in the world. And oh, well, don't get me started.
Don't
Uh,
let it go to his head.
no,
Okay.
I think it was one of the uh, it was one of the astronomer people said that it doesn't matter where you are in the universe because of the way the universe bends light and gravity and stuff. You always feel as if you're in the middle.
Oh,
So everybody's in the center of their own universe.
I can
So
see that.
I can say that Trouper is the most handsome man in the world, and you can say that someone else is the most handsome man in the world. Because we're in a different part of the universe, there is no conflict in that.
Beautiful point.
And I want to
Oh,
express my appreciation to you for doing these chats
mm.
because I am I had been quite concerned that some of our stories would be lost
Yes.
if we passed on. And I also have friends in the leather community who are beginning to lose their memories and no longer even remember.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm glad to have an opportunity to tell my story while I still can.
And we are grateful that you did.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out the Fireside Chat channel for more chapters in the history of leather. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe.